Step away from the door. Nobody in that hallway moved. 6:10 in the morning, 4th floor of a walk-up on Bellamy Street. 4 men in dark coats in a corridor built for one. Hazel Monroe was 29. She worked the early shift at a café 2 blocks south and had lived in that apartment for 6 years. The night before, she had found a man freezing in the stairwell and given him her bed. She had not asked his name. She had not known that Lorenzo Duca had not been unaccounted for a single hour in 19 years. Ma'am. Step away from the door. He's asleep. The man in front of her stopped. He's what? Asleep. He got warm about 2 hours ago and he's been out since. She held the door where it was. You can wait or you can wake him, but if you wake him, you're doing it, not me. Silence. The man looked at the other three. None of them had anything useful to offer. What's your name? He said. Hazel Monroe. He took out a pen. From inside the apartment, a voice like gravel in a bucket said, Don't write that down. Nobody in that hallway understood why. The morning before, Hazel had opened the café at 5:40, the way she had every weekday for 4 years. She made the first pot before she took her coat off. She turned the sign at 6. By 10 past, the regulars had started. She kept a notebook under the register, not for orders. A small green thing, water-stained, and in it she wrote down people. Name if she had it, time, where they sat, what they drank. She had started it in her first month because she could not remember faces, and by year 4 she did not need it and kept doing it anyway. Morning, Hazel. Morning, Mr. Okonkwo. Window. Window, your knee? Still my knee. Wet weather. Everything's wet weather to you. That's because it's always wet. She wrote, Okonkwo, 6:12. Window, black, no sugar. Knee still bad. Margaret came in at 7 and complained about her son. The 2 nurses from St. Anne's came in at 7:20 and did not talk to anybody, including each other. The man in the grey coat came in at 7:40, sat where he could see the door, paid cash, and left 40 minutes later without finishing. She wrote him down too. She had been writing him down for 3 weeks. Grey coat. 7:40. Corner. Facing door. Cash. Doesn't finish. Marguerite leaned over the counter on her way out. You still doing that book? I'm still doing the book. You know everybody's name in this place. I know everybody's name because of the book. That's the same thing. Hazel. It really isn't. Her uniform fit her full figure neatly and was plain enough that most people looked straight past her. That had bothered her at 22. It stopped around 26, when she worked out that people say a great deal in front of someone they have decided is furniture. She got off at 2, bought bread, and climbed 4 flights. Mrs. Ruiz was on the landing, as Mrs. Ruiz always was. Cold tonight, you should get a coat that closes. I have a coat that closes. You have a coat with a zip that has opinions. It closes when it wants to. That's a zip with a personality. You want a zip with a job. That was January. That was the last normal day she had. At 9 that night she went down for the mail, and there was a man sitting on the stairs between the 2nd and 3rd floor. He was in a suit that had cost more than her rent, and shaking so hard she could hear his teeth. Sir, you can't stay here. He looked up. She had never seen a face do what his face did. It registered her, decided she was not a threat, and then stopped, the way a machine stops when the power goes. Are you hurt? No. How long have you been out there? Some time. What happened to you? A car stopped in front of mine on Delancey, and I got out the other side. Where's your phone? In the river, I think. It was in my coat, and the coat is also in the river. Your people? Sent to an address in Queens at 7 o'clock. Sent by who? He did not answer that one. She went up. She got Mrs. Ruiz. He's not right, Mrs. Ruiz said. I know. He could be anybody. I know. So. Hazel looked down the stairwell. So it's 11 degrees, she said. 11 degrees isn't a reason. It's the only one I've got. She found out later that he had walked 40 minutes with a head wound and a wet coat, keeping off the avenues, because the avenues have cameras, and so did the people looking for him. He had tried 4 doors on Bellamy Street. Hers was the only one that opened. He woke at 4 in the morning and did not know where he was. Hazel was in the armchair with a blanket over her knees, because it was her apartment and there was one bed and she had made a decision about it. "You're awake." He sat up too fast. He looked at the door, then the window, then the door again. "Nobody's here," she said. "Just me. Your shoes are by the radiator. Where is this?" "Bellamy and 4th floor. You were on my stairs." He put a hand flat on the mattress, as though checking it was real. "How long?" 7 hours. 7 hours," he repeated. "You needed about 9, but you're welcome." He looked at her properly for the first time. "You put me in your bed. You were hypothermic. You don't know that word." "I did a first aid course in 2019, and it cost me $60, so I use it whenever I can." Something happened at the edge of his mouth. It did not become anything. "Who else knows I'm here?" "My neighbor. She's 71, and she thinks you're a drug problem, and you called nobody." "Who would I call?" "Anyone." "You were unconscious in a stairwell, not in a photograph. I don't have a lot of people to ring about it." He looked at his hands. "There's soup," she said. "No." "There's bread." "No, there's tea, and I'm making it anyway, so it's really a question of whether it goes in a cup or down the sink." Silence. "The cup," he said. She made the tea. He drank it sitting on the edge of her bed in a $4,000 suit, and she sat back down in the armchair, and neither of them said anything for a while. "You should sleep," she said. "I don't ever." "Not much." "Then close your eyes and lie about it." Same result. He did not laugh. But he lay back down, and he did close his eyes, and at some point his breathing changed and stayed changed. At 6:10 there were footsteps on the stairs. A lot of them, and not slow. Hazel got to the door first, which was how she came to be standing in her own hallway, telling 4 large men that they could not come in, and how a man she had known for 9 hours came to be shouting through a wall that nobody was to write her name down. The door opened behind her. Lorenzo Duca stood in it with his shoes in his hand. "Tony." "Boss." "Nobody comes up these stairs again." "Understood. Nobody asks about this building. Nobody asks about her." "Understood, boss." Lorenzo turned to Hazel. He seemed to be looking for something to say and finding the drawer empty. "Thank you for the tea," he said. Then he went down 4 flights in his socks. Tony came back alone that afternoon. He did not come up. He waited outside the cafe until her shift ended and fell into step beside her, and he was very careful to stay where she could see him. "Miss Monroe." "Hazel. Hazel. Do you know who that was?" "He didn't say." "I know he didn't say." "Then no." Tony was quiet for half a block. "Lorenzo Duca," he said. "Should that mean something?" "Yes. Say it in words I have." So he did. It took 3 minutes. What the family was, how old, how far it reached. 4 men had spent the night driving a grid of the Lower East Side. Because the last time anybody lost Lorenzo Duca for 6 hours, it ended a business and 2 marriages. Hazel had gone the color of the pavement. "He was in my bed." "Yes. He drank my tea. He drank your tea." I told him to close his eyes and lie about it. Tony stopped walking. "You said what to him?" "He said he doesn't sleep," I said. "Close your eyes and lie about it." Tony put a hand over his face. "And he did?" "For 2 hours. Miss Monroe, Hazel. Tony took his hand away. "I have worked for that man for 11 years. I have never once seen him sleep in a room he did not control." Silence. Down the block somebody's car alarm went off, and nobody looked at it. "Am I in trouble?" she said. "No. Are you sure?" "I'm not sure of anything today. The offer came in February, and she said no." Before the offer there were 3 mornings. On the first she refilled his cup and said, without looking up, "Your 4 o'clock isn't at that address." "It is. Your driver asked me for directions to the other one on Tuesday. They moved it in December." He made a call. On the second she topped up his coffee and said, "Quietly grey sedan. 3 days on this block. It leaves when you leave." On the third a man came in shouting at a woman who did not want to talk to him, and by the time Tony was out of the car it was over, and nobody had touched anybody. "He comes in Fridays. His name is Douglas." I asked about his mother. Tony looked at the small green book on the counter for a long time. Then he went and said something to the man in the car. It came again a week later, and she said no again. The third time, Lorenzo came himself. He stood in the cafe at 4 in the afternoon in a coat worth more than the building and asked her to run his private office, and she wiped down the counter while he did it. I don't know anything about offices. I have people who know about offices. Then hire one of them. I have. 6. They tell me what I want to hear. She stopped wiping. And what do you think I'd tell you? I think you'd tell me my coffee is bad. Your coffee is terrible. Tony brings it in, and it's been in the car for 20 minutes. That, Lorenzo said, is what I mean. She thought about it 4 days, then came back with conditions on a page, torn out of a green notebook. 3 months. If either of us hates it, it ends, and nobody's rude about it. Fine, I keep Saturdays and Sundays at the cafe. Why? Because I like it, and because I'm not letting one man be my whole income again. That happened once, fine. 1 week's notice either direction, and I want it written by someone who doesn't work for you. Lorenzo looked at the piece of paper for a long moment. Tony, he said, find her a lawyer who hates me. In her first week, she learned 3 things. He read everything and remembered all of it. Nobody in that building said a full sentence in front of him unless asked. She saw the third on a Thursday. She was carrying files past the long room, and the doors were open. 11 men were inside, 2 of them shouting about a shipment, and the noise came into the corridor like weather. Lorenzo walked in. 11 men stopped mid-word. He did not raise his voice. He asked 1 question about a date. Somebody answered it wrong. He asked it again in exactly the same tone, and the man who had answered went grey and corrected himself. Then we don't sign. That's $600 million. Then it's an expensive lesson for somebody. He made 1 call from the head of the table. It lasted under a minute. 2 men stood up without being told to and left. Hazel thought about it all day. Not the money, the quiet. 11 grown men who could not finish a sentence in front of him, and he still had not asked her 1 question about her life. She had worked out about his ear in the 2nd week. The espresso machine at her cafe was loud, and she had asked him a question from his left, and he had not answered, and she had assumed he was being rude. Then it happened again by the printer, then again in a car, so she started standing on his right. She moved his chair at meetings 1 seat over, twice, without saying anything. She learned to touch the table before she spoke if she was behind him. She never mentioned it, not once, in 3 months. He worked it out in April. They were in the office at 8 at night, and she came in on his right side with the calls, and he stopped and looked at her. How long have you known? Known what? Hazel. She put the calls down. 2nd week, he said. The machine at the cafe is loud. You didn't hear me. I thought you were being unpleasant, and then I thought about it. And you said nothing for 3 months. What was I going to say? You'd have had to tell me a story you didn't want to tell. Silence. He sat down. He was quiet for long enough that she went back to work, because she had learned that with him you had to let a question sit like bread. 9 years ago, he said. There was a car. I was standing closer to it than I should have been. The left side went, and it did not come back. Does it hurt? No, it's just gone. Does it bother you? It bothers me that it's a fact about me that somebody could use. That's not the same as bothering you. No, he agreed. It isn't. Who knows? 2 doctors, my mother before she died. He turned his cup a quarter turn, and nobody else, because in my life a man with a deaf side is a man you approach from the deaf side. Hazel sat down across from him. That's why you take that chair. That's why I take that chair. And 9 years nobody noticed. 9 years? Nobody was looking at me. They were looking at what I could do for them. He said it without any self-pity at all, like a man reading a manifest. You moved my chair in a meeting in February. I did. I thought I'd done it myself. That was the idea. He looked at her for a long time. Why, he said, because it's easier to move a chair than to make somebody say a hard sentence out loud. In May, Adriana Vescovi came to the house with 2 cars and a folder. Her family had been allied to his since before either of them was born. Tony had put her name on Lorenzo's desk twice that spring and been told to move the meeting both times. She was 38 and not there about a marriage. She was there because 11 men had watched Lorenzo Duca walk away from $600 million, and people had begun asking each other a question, and she had come to ask it out loud. She waited until the room was full. 9 people, both families. "I want to raise something and I'd rather do it here than behind anyone." "Then raise it." "You were unaccounted for 6 hours in January." "I'm aware. You were found in a 4th-floor walk-up on Bellamy Street." She opened the folder. "You have since employed the tenant." Hazel was at the side table with the water. "Her name is Hazel Monroe. She is 29. She earns—" "Close the folder." Adriana turned a page. That was not a request. Silence. The folder closed. "Whatever is in there belongs to her," Lorenzo said, "not to this table." "Say the rest to me in my office with the door shut." "Of course." Adriana folded her hands. "Although the table can already do the arithmetic." Hazel set the jug down very carefully. "I'm not accusing this woman of anything," Adriana said. "I'm sure she's exactly what she appears to be. That's the problem. 6 months ago you did not sleep in rooms you didn't own. Now you sleep in a stranger's bed and you walk away from $600 million in front of 11 men. People are counting, Lorenzo. They're counting out loud." Nobody at that table was drinking. "If the answer is that you've changed, that's your business. But you should know that the people who are counting have started to draw a line from January to that woman, and they are not going to stop drawing it because you told them not to." Hazel left through the kitchen. Lorenzo found her on the back steps. "Hazel, I'm going to finish out the week." "No." "She's right. Not about me. About the arithmetic." She did not turn around. "They think you're soft, and every day I'm in that building, that's one more day they get to point at. That isn't your problem to solve. It became my problem in January. Then whose is it?" He said nothing. 3 months I've worked in that house," she said. 9 people in that room, and not one of them could have told you my last name. So what am I, Lorenzo? Not to them, to you." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. She nodded once, the way she nodded at a delivery, and went to get her coat. She was gone 5 days. On the 3rd, the Vescovi review produced 3 facts. Lorenzo Duca had been taken off his route by someone who knew the route. In the 11 weeks before January the 9th, the cafe's landline had called a burner phone 19 times, a burner that had also called a number now linked to the ambush. And a young man who worked at that cafe had a cousin who cleaned the Duca house twice a week. Adriana did not say the word. She put 3 facts on a table and let 9 people join them. Lorenzo did not accept it and did not dismiss it. He said one thing: "Nobody rules on this until she is standing here," and sent Tony. Tony did not send a car. He went himself, and he waited outside the cafe, and he asked, "They think you set it up. I know what they think. Rafa's cousin cleans that house. Will you come?" Hazel went upstairs and got the notebook. She walked into that room at 4 in the afternoon and set a small green book down on the table. The landline calls were mine. 19 of them, to a bakery on Ludlow that changes its phone every time it changes owners. "I have the invoices. Tony can have them tonight." "That accounts for 1 fact," Adriana said. "It accounts for the one you built the other 2 on." Hazel opened the book. "I'm not asking anyone to take my word for anything. I'm asking you to go and check this. 3 weeks before he turned up on my stairs, a man started coming into my cafe. Grey coat, 7:40 every morning. Corner table, facing the door. Paid cash. Never finished his coffee. That describes half the. He wore a ring on his right little finger. Silver, square face, some kind of crest. He turned it whenever he was on the phone, so I wrote it down in week 1. She turned the page. January the 9th. 7:40. He was on the phone the entire time, which he had never once been before. He left a delivery envelope on the table when he went. I put it behind the counter in case he came back. Kestrel Freight, Newark, it's still there. Silence. "How do you know all that?" somebody said. "Because I write down everybody. 4 years of it. I can tell you what Mr. Okonkwo drinks, And which knee is bad? She looked up. It isn't a talent, it's a notebook. And I keep it because I'm not good with faces, which is why I can't tell you who he is. I'm telling you where to look. Tony had come around the table and gone very still over the page. Read the ring back to me. She read it. There are 4 cameras between that cafe and the corner, Tony said. There's a Kestrel account nobody in this house opened, and I can run the burner traffic against the convoy GPS for the 9th, then run it. It took 9 hours. At 1 in the morning, Tony came back with 3 printouts and did not sit down. The ring's on camera. The Kestrel account was opened in November against a house cost code. And on the 9th, one phone left the convoy route 11 minutes before the boss did, and it wasn't the boss's. Whose was it? Adriana said. Renzo Fiore. 9 people made the same small sound at once. Renzo Fiore has worked in this house for 6 years, Lorenzo said. Yes. He was in the car behind me on the 9th. Yes. Who sent the convoy to Queens? Tony did not want to say it. He did. He took the follow car himself and told us the boss had changed route without notice. He filed it that night. I read the report. I signed off on the report. Lorenzo turned to Adriana Vescovi, and for the first time that night he sounded tired. Your review found a cafe girl in 5 days. It did not find my own man in 5 months. Adriana looked at the printouts for a long moment. No, she said, it didn't. Why is that? Because we looked where it was cheap. She said it flatly, without hedging, which was the first thing all night that made Hazel revise her opinion of her. A woman with no money is an easy shape to build a theory around. A man with 6 years in this house is expensive. I knew that when I signed the review. She turned to Hazel. Miss Monroe, I put your rent on a table in front of 9 people. I'm not going to soften that. I was wrong in the way that cost somebody else and not me. Hazel did not say it was all right, because it wasn't. All right, she said. Kestrel is 40 minutes from a yard my family uses. Adriana turned back to Lorenzo. Give me the ring and the account number. You'll have the rest by Thursday at my cost, because my name is on the review. Somebody at the far end asked Hazel about the dates, she answered. Then somebody else asked her something, and it went on like that, and it was Adriana who moved down 2 seats so that Hazel could sit where the papers were. Lorenzo stood up. Before this goes any further, 3 months ago I asked this woman to work for me, and she made me pay a lawyer who hates me to write the contract. I want that in the room, because I have sat here while people implied she is here for what she can get, and the record says she is the only person in this house who has ever negotiated against me and won. He looked down the table, and she is right that nobody here knows her last name. That is not her failure. It's mine. I employed her for 3 months, and I never once asked her a question about her own life. He found her at 5 in the morning at the café, because it was Saturday, and Saturdays were hers. She was making the first pot. He stood in the doorway of a place with 9 tables and did not seem to know how to come in. We're not open. I know. You're on my left. He moved. She watched him do it. Fior? Handled. Nobody's hurt. He'll spend the rest of his life explaining himself to people who used to take his calls. That's worse. Yes. She poured 2 cups. Sit down before you say whatever it is. You look like a man about to give a speech. I don't give speeches. You gave one on Thursday. That was different. He sat. He turned the cup a quarter turn, and then another quarter, and she waited. I couldn't answer you, he said, on the steps. And it wasn't because the answer was small. What was it then? I'm 43 and I have never asked anyone for anything. I have people who bring me things before I ask. I found out this year that it is not the same. Try short ones. Stay. That's very short. You said short. She laughed, and then she stopped laughing. I want you here, not as staff. And not tonight. I'm not asking you to decide anything at 5 in the morning holding a coffee pot. Come in, Monday. We'll write down what you want your place in that house to be, and I'll sign it before I read it. You will not sign anything before you read it. No, he admitted, but I wanted to say it. She put the pot down. Ask me a question, she said. 1. Anything. You've had 3 months. He thought about it seriously, which was the part that undid her. "What did you want to be?" he said before the cafe. And she told him. It took until the sun came up, and he listened to all of it with his right ear turned toward her, and neither of them opened the shop on time. She signed the contract on a Tuesday, in a dress that was not a cafe uniform. The uniform had always made her easy to look past. That was the point of it, and she had made her peace with the point of it years ago. The dress did not, and Lorenzo lost the first sentence he had prepared and had to start from the second. "Something wrong. You've read that page twice, I'm aware." She signed and put the pen down. He stood there with 9 pages in his hand and did not seem to know what to do with his own office. "I'm not asking you this as your employer," he said. "You're on my left." He moved. He took a breath. He asked again from the other side. "Have dinner with me?" "Yes." That was quick. "I've had 8 months," Hazel said, and took his hand before he worked out whether he was allowed to take hers. 8 months after January, Hazel Monroe ran the private office. The contract was drafted by the lawyer who hated him. Authority over the office. A salary that did not depend on anyone's goodwill. 2 weeks' notice she could use in either direction. She read all 9 pages and changed 4 things. Nothing else between them started until after she had signed it. That order mattered to her, and it turned out that it mattered to him more. She kept Saturdays at the cafe. She said she would give them up when somebody produced an argument, and nobody ever did. The green notebook lives in a safe now. Tony asked for a copy of the January pages, and she said no, and then she gave him one, and started a second notebook, because the first had become evidence, and she still could not remember faces. In November the cold came back. She got to the cafe at 5:40 on a Saturday, the way she had for 5 years, and there was a man standing outside it with his hands in his pockets. He had a key. She had given it to him in September. He was not using it. She unlocked the door and held it open. "You know you don't have to wait out here anymore." "I know. It's 11 degrees. I'm aware of the temperature," Lorenzo said. "I wanted it to be you who opened the door." She thought about the stairwell. She thought about 4 doors on Bellamy Street, and the one that had opened. "Get inside," she said. "You're letting the cold in." He got inside. Some men are feared for what they can take. It is a simple kind of power, and it is not worth much, because it only works on people who still have something left to lose. There is a harder kind. It belongs to the ones who will say out loud, in a room full of people who are counting, that they were wrong. On the coldest night of that year, a woman who could not remember faces wrote down a stranger in a grey coat, and 4 months later, that notebook was the most honest thing in the room. So she had 11 degrees, a locked door, and every reason to keep it locked. What would you have done? Tell me below, and subscribe if you want more stories about the people nobody bothers to look at.